Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Tuesday tea time, happening on Thursday this week. It's been a very, very busy week for me. And I'm not at my home right now. I'm in the town of Friday Harbor. You can see the harbor out behind me and all the boats in the harbor. I absolutely had to get to town to do a couple of errands, and this was the only time I could do it. So we're doing tea time from town. I know this is not the usual time, so a lot of you guys may catch this at a later time, and that's just fine. I wanted to talk today a little bit about environmental impact. And this is kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see, there's a bunch of helicopters going overhead. The town of Friday Harbor just had a huge fire last night, so everything's a little smoky here. I think as people involved with horses, we often either overvalue the environment or undervalue the environment. Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, it's pretty beautiful here, even if it is a little smoky. So the environment is going to impact every relationship we have. It impacts all of us. Right now, you guys may hear a little noise of the helicopters going up above. I think they're news helicopters because of the fire in town, but it's a little noisy here. My apologies. But kind of a good point, because no matter where you are, no matter what's happening, there is an environmental impact on every relationship we have, and that includes the ones with our horses. And I've been thinking about that a lot this week because I moved my stallions, my boy horses, that whole herd of boy horses, to their summer pastures. And that means that stress is going to go up. It's going to go up with that move, with that change in location. And all of us have to navigate that together. So the nice thing that we have is we have a number of patterns that I know help lower stress. And those patterns that help lower stress are going to be particularly beneficial at this point in time when we have something like a big move to a new location. I really encourage people to experiment and try and figure out which patterns raise stress and which patterns lower stress. Raising stress isn't bad. Raising stress is really, really important sometimes when you need to bring a little bit of energy and excitement and enthusiasm into life. There are times in life when we actually need to pique curiosity and bring up the level of interest in a relationship. Now, more often than not with horses, it's all about bringing stress down because they are prey animals and we really need them to stay way below that threshold of fight or flight. So mostly what training systems focus on is how we bring stress down. But I guess I would encourage all of you guys to think about it a little bit. What are the things that you do that make the horse more curious, more interested, more engaged, that brings stress up from a sleeping state? What do you do that brings stress down? That would either bring them from curious into sleeping, or it would bring them from high alert into curiosity. You sort of think of this as a spectrum. So I've been thinking about it a lot this week as I play with the horses in their new locations. The mares have all moved up to my house so that they're on less grass for the summer. And the boys have all moved down into the valley so that they have a little more grass for the summer. Thank you, Rasa. This idea that the environment always has an impact is one of the best ways we can navigate our relationships. When we look at a friend or a horse and we see, oh, their stress is a little higher today than usual, maybe I'll focus on the kind of things that bring that stress down. Or if you see a friend or a horse and you think, oh, they're kind of unengaged. They seem like they're not involved in life very much. That's when I can bring the stress up a little bit to help them feel like life is fun and interesting and engaging. Now, in freedom-based training, we really focus on trying to teach horses how to do that for themselves, how to help horses learn to manage their own nervous system so they can bring their own stress up or down as needed. But we can also be a good friend. And as a good friend, we can help them bring that stress up a little bit or bring it down a little bit. So those are my thoughts for today. Just because I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, what are some examples? One of the examples for me is the use of rhythm. So the more rhythmic everything is that I do, the more I find it brings stress down. So I'll think about my breathing more. I'll think about the rhythm of my footsteps. I'll think about the movement of my arms and my hands. I'll think about how I turn my head when I look at things. If everything is very rhythmic and predictable, I find it really helps bring stress down. If, on the other hand, we want to bring interest and curiosity, we still want rhythm, but the rhythm of the way we do things is going to be a little bit more syncopated or accentuating one beat or another beat with some pauses and some fastness, so some alternating rhythms. If you think in musical terms, you want to have a rhythm that's interesting to bring stress up, and you want to have a rhythm that's more like a heartbeat to bring the stress down. So yeah, Lucy, this is something that people bring up a lot for me. Is it stress or is it energy? Because bringing stress up sounds negative. And I actually am really working to have people see that in a different light. Everybody thinks of stress as a negative, but I see it as a spectrum. And when we see it on a spectrum, it isn't positive or negative. It is increasing or decreasing. If we call it something completely different, we can't use the spectrum quite as well. And so when we think of stress as a spectrum being positive, what it does is stress is part of life. It's really an important part of life. And if we only think of it as bad, then we end up defending against stress. And I find anytime we're really defending against something, it ends up being this bit of a battle. And I want to embrace stress. I want to realize that stress is a vital part of our experience. It's a vital part of the horse's experience. We just need to learn how to dial it up or dial it down. And you can call it energy if you prefer, but the fact is you're still going to get to a point where there's either too much or too little. And when I call it stress, it feels a little bit more tangible to me. When I call it energy, it starts to feel a little bit, I'm just going to say it, a little too woo-woo for me. I like to think of things as very practical. And so calling it stress really helps me see, okay, the smoke in the air, that's going to impact the stress levels. The noise of the helicopters in the sky, that's going to impact the stress levels. The birds singing in the bushes, that's going to impact the stress levels. The new sugar in the grass that my horses are eating, that's going to impact the stress levels. Either in a good way or a bad way, we don't know, but maybe instead of calling it good or bad, we talk about it being increasing or decreasing. And either one can be good as long as it honors a sort of balance that makes everybody feel connected. Too much or too little stress is going to get in the way of a relationship. Now, obviously, we're living beings, so it's going to keep oscillating. We just want to have that energy or that stress oscillating within a range that's very functional for both the horse and the human. So think about your rhythm today. Think about the way you move. Think about if you really want to bring stress down, work more in rhythm that's like a heartbeat. And if you want to bring stress up a little bit, engage the curiosity and the interest, work in rhythms that change and vary and are dynamic. And I think you'll find that the more you practice this in really calm home situations, the more you can then use it if you have something like I did this week of a big move or a big change where there's a lot of environmental impacts that might be really bringing the horse's stress up. And then you can help bring it down by the way you relate to them. See, I have a comment here. Annie Oakley says, defending stress or obsession too much too soon. Will that both be bringing them up too much instead of going with it for a breath or two? Yeah. You know, there's so many different ways for me to look at that comment. But I think essentially when we fight against something, when we defend against anything, it brings our own stress up. It brings our own energy up too high. Whereas if we can just go with reality and say, this is what is happening, and be at peace with it for a moment, and then shape it and change it in the flow of time, there's no fight. We don't have to bring up the fight against anything. We can acknowledge the reality and then shape it over time. So, absolutely good point, Annie. All right, you guys, I've got to go do some errands and get back to all of my horses and organization. It was great talking to you guys today. I will be on the road soon, so I look forward to seeing some of you in my travels. I'll be in Vancouver, British Columbia next weekend. Not this coming one, but the one after that. Easter weekend in the US. And then shortly after that, I will be headed to the UK where I will see a bunch of you guys. And then Belgium and France after that. And then I will be in Indiana on my way home. So thank you guys for joining me for tea time. And I will see you all again next Tuesday, if not somewhere along the road.